Greetings and welcome to this edition of Faith to Live By. I'm your host of this weekly program where I seek to help us explore current events from a biblical and prophetic perspective. To set the tone for today's podcast, beginning mid-August, I had Mel Kay on as my guest, where she helped us confirm that we have been subject to a decades-long elaborate effort of social engineering and mind control by self-appointed elite people who have assumed to play God with world events. And within their intricate and evil plans and strategies, they plan to gain world control, including the ownership and enslavement of the world population. Following for the past 3 weeks, Kay Rubacek has been my guest, exploring the deceptive aspects of artificial intelligence, also confirming for us that the philosophy behind the efforts of the self-appointed elite, who are referred to as the globalists, is nothing short of tyrannical communism, and how the people of the world have come dangerously close to being overcome because of our failure as God's people to remain committed to upholding truth and our failure to remain properly aligned with Jesus, who himself is truth. Today, I have Twila Brase, founder of Citizens Council for Health Freedoms, as my guest, to help us understand yet another area we've been deceived by government overreach seeking to control us. Using the same propaganda tactics Hitler used, creating programs with titles that make us want to support them, our government has deceived us with what's known as the HIPAA laws. What you think is your medical privacy protection is in reality your complete medical exposure. Mel Kay, Kay Rubacek, and Twila Brase are expertly equipped, able to outline our present-day reality, providing conclusive evidence of the globalist advancements while explaining how we got to the place we're at. However, as dire as things have been, and while it may appear the evil globalists have the upper hand, as these women explain, in reality they are closer than ever to seeing their 100-year effort utterly fail, and as of today, they know it. The first and foremost thing I want us to remain focused on from now on through the beginning of 2026 is the innumerous times God has prophetically said, quote, "Things are not as they appear," end quote. Given all that has happened since 2020, with the radical advancement of the globalists' agenda and their tyrannical control evidenced with the COVID-19 pandemic, the Georgia Guidestones, Club Rome, the World Economic Forum, and the World Health Organization, the United Nations, and so much more, given what has happened with various global conflicts of Israel and Iran, Russia, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, and so much more. Given the globalist advances with the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and France, among others, recognizing Palestine, creating more division, given the United States elections, the Biden administration, and more recently, the reports of the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, and we're clearly seeing God's intervention and efforts to wake people up to truth worldwide. I think especially now, in these days of this new Hebrew year, we must focus on what God says over and above anything we see or hear from sources that are not of God. We need to know what God says in both his written word, the Bible, and what he says through his trusted prophets. Without a doubt, God has been waking people up from the deep deceptions we have lived under for hundreds of years, causing us to see the lies evil people have sought to control us with, so that we will come to our senses, experience righteous anger, and insist on our God-given rights and freedoms to live our lives as God has always intended. There is a great deal we still do not know, and I, for one, am not inclined to believe what we've been told or have been caused to see by mainstream media. I have tried to always bring you truth without being on the fringe or sensationalizing events. I have shared reasons for us to believe God has been faithfully intervening in the affairs of humanity to deliver us from the advances of evil in our day, and I believe there has been a highly organized war against the evil globalists that has been underway for several years and is soon to become widely known resulting in unprecedented freedoms for God's people worldwide. I believe the recent events of September 10th surrounding Charlie Kirk is being used by God to create His planned turning point for the world. I have some specific considerations I believe will be confirmed in the not-too-distant future. I believe the evil globalists, influenced by Satan, actually think they can take the place of God. And in that derangement, they think God is of no threat to them. Yet, with tremendous inconsistency, they recognize Christianity and the independent American spirit as forces that can stop them, so they've earnestly targeted to take Christian patriots out. For decades upon decades, they have worked to remove all references of God and to wear down the saints to cause us, to give up on our faith. The evil globalists still believe they can accomplish their goals by 2030. They have tasted what they think is their victory, and they believe they are so very close. And just today, September 23rd, when I'm recording this podcast, Julie Green posted prophecy she received on September 14th, where God stated, "The globalists, under the orders of the Illuminati, have instructed the United States intelligence community to have specific people killed by certain dates." God said they are so desperate to kill this nation, and whatever death they try to cause will instead happen to them. End quote. It was September 10th, 2025, when the world watched as cameras displayed the tragic shooting death of Charlie Kirk. The result has been what may be the greatest worldwide response for truth and righteousness ever seen. There has been a ton of speculation and claims about Charlie's death, the details of the shooting, questioning if it was a lone gunman, and so much more. As I said last week, the egregious murder of Charlie Kirk should be likened to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. Just as the details of their deaths are not fully known, I don't believe the details surrounding Charlie Kirk are properly known yet, and I don't think they will be for quite some time. Regardless of how long, those who conspired against JFK, RFK, MLK Jr., and now Charlie Kirk have blood on their hands, and they will be held accountable for their evil, murderous deeds. It's not just those who pulled the trigger, but all those who were complicit in evil perpetrated against these men because they stood in the way of their evil victory. Sadly, these are just a few of the lives the evil globalists have taken. There are many, many others, but not one life, not one evil deed has escaped the eyes of God. Neither will a single evil deed go unpunished. God has proven Himself faithful in such matters all throughout history. God has promised to always uphold justice and that He would personally enact vengeance. These days we live in now are the days God has appointed for His justice to be visible. These are the days God has appointed for His people, the church, or better stated, the ecclesia, to rise up and take back our proper influence and victory over evil that God always intended and Christ died to assure we would have. The reports from the Turning Point organization regarding applications for new chapters on college campuses continues to grow. Charlie had secured approximately 3,000 chapters in his limited years seeking to expand the mission. Yet in less than a matter of days, the number of new applications were 62,000 and growing. Additionally, their efforts known as Turning Point Faith Connect is exponentially expanding, and I'm expecting to find a way for my ministry, Pamela Christian Ministries, to be a part of that effort. I suspect you at least saw portions of the memorial celebration held for Charlie Kirk on Sunday, September 21st. What the whole world witnessed were the leaders of the United States of America, one of the nations that has been opposing the globalists, joining together in celebration of Charlie and worship and praise of the one true God in loving demonstrations, not violent protests. Because of what is called the continuity of government and the order of succession, it is entirely unprecedented for us to see the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, the White House Chief of Staff, the Director of National Intelligence, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the Secretary of Defense, now known as the Department of Warfare, the Secretary of State, the Vice President, and the President of the United States, all in one location. As I said, there are a few things for me that don't add up, not only about Charlie Kirk's assassination, but about many people and events since 2016. Yet, I fully expect God to reveal the truth in time. God has also forewarned us that some of what we will learn will be completely shocking, and He has instructed us to brace ourselves. I will also say I absolutely loved seeing the entire United States cabinet present and promote the gospel of truth of Jesus, which was in itself tremendously powerful, but I especially loved it was in the face of our enemies. Certainly the most compelling was Erica Kirk, publicly stating she forgives the young man who was used by evil to kill her husband and to take his life and presence away from her and their precious children. It was estimated over 100,000 people gathered in Phoenix to celebrate Charlie, with hundreds of other memorial services for Charlie, one being by his pastor, Rob McCoy, that I watched through tears. I have the link for you in the show notes. And only God knows the numbers of people who will witness this service via television and social media, and all of them will hear the gospel many times over. And this is just the beginning of the tsunami of truth and love we are certain to experience with this revival God has brought following the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I can't help but believe Charlie Kirk's martyrdom is the catalyst for the end times great harvest of souls, which means you and I are being called upon under no uncertain terms to be a part of what God is doing now. God is answering our prayers to be released from evil, and He expects us, each one of us, to find our place in His plan, in partnership with Him, to see His kingdom will done on earth as it is in heaven. One area that needs workers of the harvest to bring truth and expose evils and restore what is right is government overreach. This exists in many areas. One that my recent guests, Mel Kay and Kay Rubacek, discussed is illegal tracking and surveillance. Well, my guest today, Twila Brase, has been working in the same area to put an end to government overreach specific to our medical records. I have Twila's bio and other information for you in the show notes. If you can, I recommend you get a pencil and paper handy because Twila has specific actions we can and must take to reverse these infringements upon our privacy and freedoms. So Twila Brase, I'm so grateful to have you with us, that you'll be able to speak to my audience and help us learn what you've been learning about for quite a while. Let's start with your background in ER as a nurse and how this was all very much a wake-up call for you.
Yeah, I would say that growing up, I could have cared less about policy or politics. I was having my life, and I became a nurse. I worked in the ER, and then to have better hours, I became a school nurse. And it was when I started hearing about President Clinton's plan for healthcare. And because I grew up very much appreciative of the fact that I am an American, I figured out that very young in life that I would not have had to have been born in America. And so I have long prized being an American, prized the flag, prized everything great about our country, but really wasn't involved at all. But when President Clinton started talking about how he was going to take over the healthcare system through a national health security system, that's what really caught my attention, because I knew that if the government took over the healthcare system, they would take over the country. At least that's what I thought would happen. And I think what we know now, post-COVID, so to speak, is how easy it is to use healthcare to take over a country. to shut us up, to lock us up, and, to force things upon us, to take away our jobs. We now have seen how healthcare can be used. But so it was interesting to me because that was back in 1993 when I listened to President Clinton, and I realized this must never happen. And that was the beginning of starting a nonprofit to fight against socialized medicine and for patient and doctor freedom.
And what's the name of the nonprofit, Twila?
Citizens Council for Health Freedom, and our mission is to protect patient and doctor freedom.
Now, talking about protecting patients and doctor freedoms, I saw you on a program called Dark Horse and heard you speaking, and that's when I knew I had to have you on the program to speak to my audience. And I thought it was very interesting that it was your work as a nurse in the emergency room, specific to HIPAA, that also really ignited a fire under you. Can you help my audience understand more about that, please?
I knew nothing about HIPAA as a nurse in the emergency room, but here's what I did know is I was an advocate for patients. And so I was very thoughtful about their need for privacy. I was very thoughtful about their need to tell me things that they didn't want in any kind of record anywhere. I think I have had not only a freedom bone for the entirety of my life, but a very much of a privacy brain. And so I really prize privacy. And what I know now is that privacy is the foundation of freedom. Because if you don't have your privacy, if you don't have privacy rights, then you let all these outsiders come in, watch you, surveil you, listen to your words, watch your behaviors and attitudes and learn your habits and all this kind of stuff. And all of that can be used against you. But I learned about HIPAA in 1996 when the bill was going through Congress because I started this policy organization in 1995. And so it was really very much a newbie about policy. Like I said, I never followed it or anything until President Clinton. So I was very much of a newbie. But as soon as HIPAA came through, and I learned from another organization about this one section called administrative simplification. And it required a unique patient identifier to be issued by the federal government to every person. And it required a unique identifier for every doctor, for every employer, for every health plan. And then it had all of this digitization of our data without our consent, and it took away our privacy rights. And that's when I learned what HIPAA was. And that's when privacy became a really big deal for me and for our organization and the work that we do.
And you call that unique patient simplification, is that correct?
No, the section of the bill was called administrative simplification, but it could have better been called patient privacy elimination.
Okay.
That would have been a better term for that section of the HIPAA bill. So, people when they think of the word HIPAA, they think of privacy. A lot of people think that the P of HIPAA stands for privacy. It doesn't. It's actually the name of the bill, which is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. But it's because there's this one little section in there called administrative simplification to take away our consent rights, to take away our privacy rights, and to digitize all the data. That's why it's called like the HIPAA law, the HIPAA rule, the HIPAA notice of privacy practices. It's because of that one little section in what was really an insurance portability bill.
Okay, so you're saying then all this time we have been misled to thinking that this bill was protecting our privacy rights when instead it's actually projecting and sharing our personal data across many platforms. How many platforms? Where is our information being used?
Yeah, so I wrote a book, Big Brother in the Exam Room, The Dangerous Truth About Electronic Health Records. I have an entire section on HIPAA, and then lots of sections on the mandated government electronic health record. And I call it the government EHR because it has to be government certified. It has to do what the government wants it to do. It has to be used meaningfully. And I mean those words intentionally. There are actual meaningful use regulations for doctors, forcing them to use that electronic health record system as the government wants it used, or to receive less money for every Medicare patient that they see. So when you talk about, HIPAA and all this time that you have been deceived, indeed, they meant to deceive, and I say that because they call it the notice of privacy practices. There's this little statement often in a consent form when you go to the doctor, to the hospital, and there's a number of things in the piece of paper, or sometimes it's its own form. But it says, I acknowledge or read or have received the notice of privacy practices. So they called it the notice of privacy practices. But if you read it, it is all the ways that that clinic or that hospital is going to share all of your information without your consent. But see, most people don't read it because they just believe the words. They believe what they were told. And so they've been deceived, and that was the entire intent. The other part of that deception is that they ask you to sign this form, that if you received it or read it or understood it, right? And by signing it, the American people believe that, and the staff will often say, well, this is for HIPAA privacy. That's what they'll say. This is just all about, protecting your privacy. So, I mean, they can't even imagine a reason why you wouldn't want to sign it, because they don't have any idea that this is not about privacy at all. It's about taking away your privacy. But forcing you to sign, or trying to get you to sign that form, is putting into your brain how protective they are being of your privacy. When if you actually look at the notice of privacy practices, you will realize that the only thing that you're signing is acknowledgement that you understand that you have no privacy. That's all you're signing, is that I realize I have no privacy. But that's not what people think they're signing.
Exactly. I mean, I'm thinking of my own experience. For years, we're talking since 1996. My goodness, it's been a very long time. You're saying that there's the notice of privacy practices on these documents, and that allows them to share our information without our consent. But when we sign the form, are we giving our consent?
No, you're not giving your consent. This is what's so confusing, and this is what's so deceiving. I'm going to just take you through going to the doctor's office so this is a little clearer. So you come to the doctor's office and you're either given papers to sign, or you've been asked to fill out papers before you ever get there and bring them in. So one of those two things happens. So I'll tell you the paper version and the iPad version, or the electronic tablet version. One way or the other, you are being asked to read and sign forms. And different hospitals, different clinics do things differently. But one of the things that the federal law requires is that they try to get you to sign something somewhere that says, I acknowledge that I have read the notice of privacy practices, or I acknowledge that I have received the notice of privacy practices. So that's the one thing that they have to do. So in one of those papers, and somewhere on that electronic pad, that iPad, there will be a statement just like that. I agree that I have, or I understand that I have received the notice of privacy practices, or something like that. It's the notice of privacy practices language that you have to be looking for. And so it can be buried in a multi-consent form, like a consent form that says, if it's on the paper, it says, I consent to treatment, I consent to be billed, I consent to this, I consent to that. I acknowledge that I have to guard my own property in this institution. I know that you're going to test me for HIV if I accidentally get, exposed. All these things could be on one form, and somewhere in that form, either it's just one of the items, or at the very end it will say, and I also acknowledge that I have received the notice of privacy practices. Or there might be an institution that gives you the notice of privacy practices and says, sign on the bottom of every page. Now, that you're just signing that you have seen it, but it's actually more thoughtful to do that, because then you could actually maybe have a reason to look at that form. right? But now a lot of the clinics are coming out with no paper. They'll either do it online and ask you to do it before you ever get there, or they'll give you an iPad. And then it'll be click, click, fill in, click, 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 click. And at one point, you're going to get to the part where it says, I have received the notice of privacy practices. Well, when I get to that one, that's the end. That's the end of the clicking. I take my iPad up, and then at that point, or at some point, I will say, I need the paper forms because I'm not going to agree to all of these things. And so I'm going to be crossing things out on the paper forms. And sometimes they'll say, well, we don't do that. I'm like, well, that's what I need. Somewhere there's a paper form and I need to cross things out. So you have to get me the paper form. And sometimes that means getting the manager. Sometimes that means going into the computer and figuring out where's the paper form. And you, just as an individual, you shouldn't have to do this because you're a patient. They should be taking care of you, but you're having to protect yourself. And as a nurse, that just pains me. But anyway, that's what you have to do. And so we ask you to not sign that form, to cross out any of that language. And what we are having some success with this campaign to get people to refuse to sign the HIPAA form, refuse to sign that acknowledgement statement of the notice of privacy practices. We just this summer, we've gotten sent to us 2 different consent forms. One that was all HIPAA, that's all it was. And at the bottom of it, it actually had a place for the clinic to check off that you had refused. And when you look at what the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services says about the notice of privacy practices and that acknowledgement statement, they say by law, you are not required to sign that statement. And then the next few bullet points down, they say your providers, when you refuse, they must sign that you have refused and date it. So this particular form that we got this summer was perfect. It had that language up there, but then it had this whole section that said patient refused or patient was comatose and so couldn't sign, or, they had different things that they could check off, right? And that's the way to do it. And, but the staff in the office sometimes has to be told that by law, I don't have to do this. So I will just tell you the easiest way to do this is there are so many clinic staffs where the attorneys of the clinic have said it's a HIPAA violation if you do not get them to sign. Well, this is completely bogus. That is not true. And even the HHS website says that's not true. But this is an easy thing. This, lawyers just throw this out there and clinics just believe it. And, they go about their business until someone like you or me come in and say, yeah, no, I don't have to do that. Easiest way is to find that website. And we've got CCHF discharge instructions that has that website on it. So people can go to our website, cchfreedom.org, cchfreedom.org, and they can go down on the homepage almost all the way to the bottom, and they'll see a section called Helpful Handouts. And they can find our discharge instructions in there. And it shows the 5 different ways you'll be presented with this form, including those tiny little boxes, right? Those tiny little boxes that say nothing. And all they say is, it's the HIPAA form, just sign it. You can't see any words, you see nothing, because it's only like, 4 by 4 inches. And so we have on that all the different ways you might be presented this and how to refuse each one of those ways. And then this one way to really win. You come with the HHS website on your phone. You've either taken a screenshot of it before you got there, or it's a live website right on your phone. And you take that little section where HHS says, by law, you do not have to sign this form. And then that's the first bullet. And then the 4th bullet says, your providers, when you refuse, have to acknowledge that you have refused. They're the ones that have to record it. When I have done that, and they can see it's a live website or it's taken off of a live website, I get no pushback.
Okay, that's very good advice.
But now your people listening are going to say, but I've signed so many HIPAA forms. What on earth am I going to do? Well, first of all, they keep presenting them to you. So in the future, just don't sign them. And now they're going to say, but so not signing it means I'll protect my information, right? They won't be able to get it. Nope, that's not true either. Because HIPAA allows all of these people to have access to your information, identified information, your name, your address, everything, all without your consent. That's what HIPAA does, unless you have a stronger state law, and like almost no state does. They can share that information hither and yon, back and forth. They don't have to, they're not required to, but they have all the power over deciding. Those who have your data have all the power to share it with so many entities. And they don't even have to tell you who they shared it with. And you signing the form does not change it, whether you sign it or you don't sign it. You have to understand that the form means nothing. It is a ruse. It is meant specifically to deceive you. But they would say, no, we're not deceiving. Because if they actually looked at the notice of privacy practices, they'd see that we can share all this information without their consent. So we're not lying to them. If they don't look at the form and see that it actually means that we're sharing it, well, we're not deceiving them. They just haven't done all their research. But the whole thing is meant to be deceptive because they called it a notice of privacy practices. There's nothing privacy about disclosure hither and yon.
So, what we've been caused to believe is for our protection has been an intentional deception to be able to share our private medical information. And a quick research using AI further promotes the deception. I read, quote, HIPAA stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, passed in 1996. HIPAA is a federal law that sets a national standard to protect medical records and other personal health information, end quote. You'll find links to the organization Twila founded, where you will also have access to their resources in the show notes. The main point is for us to understand that people in the doctor's offices, clinics, and hospitals are likely also misinformed about HIPAA and our rights and their requirements. So above all, understand that you're not legally required to sign the HIPAA documents. And I think it's an excellent idea to put a letter on file that you rescind any and all previous agreements to the HIPAA provisions. To close out today's show, I want to point out, as of September 22nd, 2025, with the Hebrew High Holy Day of Rosh Hashanah, we entered the new Hebrew year of 5786, which I am very excited about. This year is expected to bring divine connections, such as Jacob's ladder, where heaven is connected to earth, allowing us to experience all sorts of divine interventions. It's expected to be a year where God will connect prophecy to reality, and we will finally be able to make sense out of God's specific plans and our personal given assignments in God's plans. From Rosh Hashanah for the next 10 days, known as the 10 Days of Awe, leading up to Yom Kippur, also known as the Day of Atonement, people traditionally seek the Lord in somber introspections and repentance to be cleansed and ready for our purpose in the new year. Yom Kippur is the highest, holiest day of the Jewish year, which will be on October 1st and 2nd, 2025. I'll speak more about this in the weeks to come, but today, please consider the timing of Rosh Hashanah given world events. With understanding, God works according to His events, His strategic plans for our ultimate outcome. Twila will return next week to further explore our rights specific to HIPAA, an effort that has led Twila to learning about the Real ID efforts here in the United States, and how that is actually an effort by the federal government to turn State Department of Motor Vehicles into a source of illegal tracking and surveillance of United States citizens without our consent. And, as always, you can expect me to bring you information as to what you can and must do to protect yourself and your loved ones. Now, I want to get your attention to make a point of signing up for our Greece tour. We're taking names now on a reservation list for our upcoming Greece tour in April 2026. We want to get a group of about 30 people signed up because this size group is the best for this type tour. And the more people who sign up, the less the trip costs each and every one of us. Some who previously signed up have had to let me know that their plans have changed, which means we have more spots available now and we want to fill them up. At this point, it's just a matter of putting your name on the reservation list with your final confirmation in the next month or so. So please listen to my closing announcements about the tour and also announcements about the many goods and services I bring you in an effort to at least cover the costs of this podcast. It may seem far off, but most people make plans for a significant vacation about a year in advance. So if you haven't already expressed interest in traveling with us in April 2026, now is the time to do so. We want to have about 30 people total because this size group works best for the specific tour I have in mind. We'll be walking the footsteps of the Apostle Paul. I'm using the time between now and October 2025 to determine if we have enough interest, and the trend indicates we definitely should. We have just about 30 people on the list now, but I'd like to have more because when it comes to the actual day of making a commitment, things could have changed, and I want to be able to have at least 30 actually attend the tour. So, if you think you'd like to be part of the Faith to Live By Christian tour with me in Greece during April 2026, now is the time to get your name and number in your party on the list. There's no obligation at this point, you're just expressing your interest. Attendees need to arrange their own air travel to and from the Athens International Airport. To get your name on the list, send an email to faithtoliveby@PamelaChristianMinistries.com with the word Greece in the subject line. In the body of the email, provide your name, contact information, and number of people you expect to be in your party. This will place your name on the interested in attending list, but does not obligate you in any way. It merely assures you have first right of refusal when down payments are due. If you didn't get the details written down that I just shared, simply visit my Beyond the Podcast page using the link in the show notes. If you like what you hear from me with this podcast, I highly recommend my book series, my award-winning blog, and consider signing up for my certificate course in apologetics. My aim with that course is to help people learn how not only to use apologetics to share truth with others, but to help Christian leaders incorporate apologetics into their respective ministries so more Christians are learning how to share their faith. You can learn more by using the link in the show notes. For now, I offer my weekly podcasts, my blog, and bi-monthly e-newsletter at no cost. And certainly I have hard costs associated with doing all I do. If you've been blessed by my work and would like to help my work reach others, why not consider partnering with me? For as little as $10 a month, you can become a partner. Then together we can reach even more people for Jesus. Simply visit my Pamela Christian Ministries homepage and then click on the Give button at the top menu bar. Or if you prefer, you can go directly to the Give page using the link in the show notes. To become a partner, you can use my PayPal or Venmo account, but you will also see other ways you can support my work on that page. Whether you choose to become a monthly partner, give a one-time donation, purchase my books and products from my web store, or support my affiliate sponsors, anything you can do to help me continue this work would be greatly appreciated. And as always, your prayers and telling others about me and my ministry work is much needed. When it comes to my selection of affiliate sponsors, I first look for Christian-owned and operated businesses, and I make a point of personally using the products or services so I can fully endorse them. I seek sponsors that offer products or services you can get via the internet worldwide, and I specifically consider what is common to most people universally. So you'll find health, beauty, and wellness products through Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack supplements and from QE Strong. Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack supplements are truly amazing and are available to my listeners for a 5% discount per purchase or a 10% discount for a monthly subscription using the promo code FTLB. You may have heard my interview with Rob Renee about QE Strong. Discover the benefits of quantum energy to overcome all sorts of ailments. Visit QEstrong.com and use the promo code FTLB at checkout to receive your discount. Then my newest affiliate I'm really excited to bring you is Q Streaming. That's CUE Streaming Television. People with United States addresses can get over 3,000 channels, including live TV with streaming television without a contract. Get all of your local networks and favorite movie and sports and pay-per-view channels for about half of what cable costs. See the video promo link in the show notes to learn more. Affiliate sponsors only provide financial support to me when you purchase what they offer. So before you support Amazon or any other retailer, if I offer what you're looking for, please purchase through me. When it comes to special occasions, birthdays, or Christmas gifts, consider my books, jewelry, CDs, and more from my web store or any of the affiliate goods and services I offer. When you purchase from my web store, be sure to use the promo code TRUTH, TRUTH, to receive a 20% discount. Again, you'll find all the links in the show notes. If you like the content and resource material I bring you with this podcast, you'll find much more by connecting with me through my blog. In fact, my blog has been awarded 2 unsolicited awards for Christian content. And I'm also very active on social media. I can cover much more on social media than I can with this weekly podcast. And if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to my complimentary bi-monthly e-newsletter. I offer encouragement, special offers, and one of my signature recipes with each and every edition. Yep, I'm a foodie and I love to entertain, which is why Faith, Family, Friends, and Food is a bonus segment of my bi-monthly e-newsletter. To receive even more, please be sure to check out my dedicated podcast listeners page, Beyond the Podcast. Here's where we can connect exclusively and you can download complimentary devotionals, resources, and more. On that page, I also ask you to help me learn more about you and what you want by completing the form visible once you scroll down that page. And something that is very easy for you to do and would mean a lot to me is for you to rate, subscribe, or comment on this podcast according to what your preferred listening platform allows. You know how it works. The more likes and subscriptions to this podcast, the more opportunity we have to expand the listening audience. And that means we can reach more people with the gospel message of Jesus while helping people learn how to better apply their Christian faith. I hope you'll join me next week and tell your friends and family to listen right here on Faith to Live By, where we learn how to gain spiritual victory over life's issues. Until next week, I'm Pam Christian, asking you to remember Christ died for us. The least we can do is live for Him.